going on, guys? John Elder here from Codemy.com, and in this video, I want to continue building out our database app with Tkinter and Python. All right, in the last video, we created the database, connected to it, created a table. In this video, we want to start to build out the graphical user interface, the things that allow us to type in entries and save them into the database and all that good stuff. But before we get started, if you like this video and want to see more like it, be sure to smash the like button below, subscribe to the channel, and check out Codemy.com, where I have dozens of courses with hundreds of videos that teach you to code. Use coupon code YouTube to get $22 off membership. That's all my courses, videos, and books for a one-time fee of just $27, which is insanely cheap. Okay, so we got our database.py file from the last video. We've connected to our database, created the database. We have our cursor. We've created our table. Now we can comment out the table because we don't want to recreate the table every time we run the program. We just need to do it one time. So now we can add stuff to the table, and that's what we want to look at in this video. So the first thing we want to do is create some text boxes that we can type information into. So we want one for first name, last name, address, city, state, and zip code. And we're going to use entry boxes, entry widgets with Tkinter. We've done this in previous videos, so you should remember how to do it. If not, take a look back at the older videos. So I'm going to create one called first name, and let's call it's an entry widget, and we want it in root, and we want the width to be what? Say 30-ish. It's probably good. And we need to now put this on the screen. So f_name.grid. And we don't want to pack this because we're going to have a whole bunch of stuff here. So we don't want to really just pack everything. We want to have a little bit more sort of options to place them exactly where we want. So of course we're going to use the grid system. So we want this to be in row equals 0 and column equals 0. And for this one, well, first let me just copy this. And then for the first one here, I'm also going to put, a pad X of say 20, just to pad it a little bit. So now we need one for last name, address, city, state, and zip. So I'm just going to copy and paste. So last name, address, city, state, zip, and then just come through here and change these to L name. This one will change to address and address. This is very glamorous work here. City, and state, and finally zip code and zip code. Okay, so we probably want them in column 1 because we need to put text next to them, a little label to describe which, box is which. So let's probably change this to 1 for each of these. Now that I think about it, it's a good thing to think these things through first. I should have really done that. All right, so the first one is in row 0. The next one we want on the next line down. So that's row 1, row 2, row 3, row 4, row 5, and that looks like it. So, all right, we can put these all back together here. And let's make a little comment. Let's say create text boxes. All right, so like I said, we also want to create text box labels. And let's see, let's call them first name underscore label. And that's, of course, going to be a label. And we want it in root. And we want the text to equal first name. And that should work. Now we want a first underscore name underscore label dot grid. And we want this to be row equals 0 and column equals 0. Okay, so same deal. We just need one now for last name, address, city, state, zip. And just come through here and change these again. So address label, and address label, city label, state label, very exciting, state label, zip code label, and zip code label. And again, we want row 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And up here, we just need to change these to last. And then again, address, bear with me, city, the joys of Tkinter, state, and finally, zip code. All right. So let's put these all together. I just put line spaces just so it's a little easier to make sense of it as we're typing them. Okay, so now we also need buttons, right? So let's we want to create a submit button, right? Okay, so let's call this submit underscore button, and that's going to be a button, and it's going to be in root, and the text is going to be what? Add record to database. Right, that works. And we want this to have a command, and let's just call this what? Submit. Probably good. All right, so we want submit button dot grid. And where do we want this? We want this in row equals 6 because we want it underneath there. And column equals probably 0, right? And we probably want this to span across both columns. So let's go column span equals 2. And what else do we want? I probably want to put some padding. So pad y equals 10, let's say. And that'll put it down a little. And I want pad x to equal probably another 10. That'll put it over a little bit. And I want ipad x to equal 100. So we want to stretch it out a little bit. Okay, so I think that will work. Now we need to create this submit function. So let's kind of head up here, somewhere up here. This looks good. And let's go create submit function for database, I guess. So define submit, and let's just return it for now. Actually, let's clear the text boxes. So every time we enter stuff into the text boxes and click the button to submit it into the database, we want those text boxes then to clear. So then we can afterwards type in another record if we want. We don't want that information to just be sitting there. So we can do that with f underscore name, call the actual name of the entry widget, dot delete, and then give it a 0 and an end. So we just do this for each one. First name, last name, address, city, state, zip. And one more time, the fun work of typing these in over and over. So address, city, state, and finally zip code. All right, so let's save this and run it. Pull up our thing here, and we want database.py. Pull it over, and yeah, it's looking pretty good. So now if we type some stuff in here, and then click this button, boom, it disappears. All right, so far so good. Not bad. So now what do we want to do? We need to actually create some code to submit the stuff that we type into the database itself. So the first thing that's kind of weird is you gotta connect to your database and create a cursor inside of your function when you use functions. I'm not really sure why that is, but it is the case. So make sure these tabbed over. And let's head down to the bottom here and grab these two lines. We want to commit our stuff and close our connection. We need to do that inside of our function as well. Tab those over. Okay, so now how do we actually submit the stuff from our form, right? Okay, so let's go insert into table, right? And just like before, when we had our c.execute to create a table, we're gonna again c.execute, and we almost always execute our cursor. It's just what we do. So we're gonna use SQL now to insert into, and we name the table that we want, addresses, right? And the values of something, right? So before we use this doc type string thing, doc string, doc type, whatever it's called. This time I want to use placeholder variables, just a different way to do it. And you do that by just creating sort of dummy variables. And you start with a colon. Each one starts with a colon. So I'm going to name these the same as our text boxes. You can name them anything you want, but it makes sense to name them what they're going to be. So first name underscore last name. Oops, we need a colon. Separate them each with commas. And then colon address, comma, colon city, not a period, a comma, colon state, comma, colon zip code. Okay. Now, at the end of this, we need to, oops, there we go, stick a comma and then come down. Now, inside of here, we need to create I almost said Ruby dictionary, a Python dictionary. And it's just this. And Python dictionaries have key value pairs. And the key will be this dummy variable. And the value will be whatever's in our text box, right? So that's how that works. Pretty simple. So let's go f underscore name. And you separate them with colons. And then remember, Tkinter variables, we can get them and set them. Well, entry widgets are like Tkinter variables. We can get or set them. So that's what we're going to do. So let's go f underscore name dot get and then comma. And then just on the next line, we just go through and do one for each of these. Last name, colon, l underscore name dot get. It's very exciting work here. Address, colon, address dot get. And then what city, colon, city dot get. And then state, colon, state dot get. And then finally zip code, colon, zip code dot get. And this is the last one, so we don't have to put a comma. And remember, these things are these. So if you named these up here, A, B, C, D, E, F, this column here would be A, B, C, D, E, F. We just happen to name them the same as we named our widgets, our entry widgets, just because that kind of makes sense. Okay, so now we can kind of do some stuff here to make this look better. Okay, so if we save this and we can run this just to make sure it worked. Now, we're not going to be able to see if it worked yet because we haven't created any functionality to output the stuff from the database onto the screen, but at least we can see if we get an error. So let's go John Elder, 10 West Elm. I used to live on 10 West Elm in Chicago years and years ago. Live in Vegas now, but I used to live in very cold Chicago downtown. It was pretty cool. So add record, boom, it disappeared. And if we end it, we didn't get any errors up here, so we can assume that it added the thing in and we're good to go. Okay, so now we need to create a button to actually pull whatever's in the database out and then put it on the screen. So we can see whether or not this first part worked yet. So let's go down here and let's just create a query button. And we want to call this, what, query underscore button. And this is a button. We want it in root, and we want the text to equal what? Show records, maybe? I think that's probably good. And we want to give this a command of what? Let's call this query. We'll create a query function. And we want to query underscore button dot grid this thing. And so we're in row, what, 7 now? Column equals 0. And again, we want to column span this guy to 2. And let's go pad y equals 10 and pad x equals 10. And let's stretch this with ipad x equals 137, which I happen to know is a very nice size. So if we save this real quick and just look at this, we can see, oh, name query is not defined. We got to create that function real quick. So what do we call it? Query. Let's head up here and let's say underneath our submit guy, submit function, let's go create query function. And let's go define query, Q-U-E-R-Y. And let's just return for now. All right, save this. Cancel that. Run this again. Boom. Now what did I? Oh, I misspelled column span. I do that sometimes. Column spanned. That's a ugly typo. All right, so save this. Run it again. Third time's the charm, and boom. So that button looks pretty good sized compared to the other one. And of course, it doesn't do anything yet, so we can close this. Let's clear the screen. Okay, so querying the database. We haven't really talked about this yet, but it's fairly simple. Again, let's come up to our submit guy, and let's copy. We still need to connect to the database again. And we still need to commit and close. So we'll grab that. There we go. Okay, so to query the database, it's pretty simple. We just, again, use our cursor and execute like always. So it's that c.execute, and then it's a function. So inside of here, we want to run some SQL command. We want to execute our SQL command. And the command we want is select. So we want to select, and what do we want to select? We want to select everything. So the star means everything. And we want to select it from our addresses table, right? So one more thing we want to do is, in most databases, you have to designate and create a primary key for each record. And a primary key is a unique record, a unique number. So, every single entry you make, it's a unique sort of ID number. And in SQLite 3, it creates it for you. So we don't even need to do that ourselves, which is really, really cool. But it kind of ignores it. Since it creates it for you, it ignores it, unless you specifically tell it to print that number. And we kind of want to see what that number is. So we want to select everything and the OID. And OID, I'm not sure what that stands for. I don't even remember at this point. Original ID, maybe? I don't know. But it's the primary key, right? So primary keys are useful for a lot of different things. Specifically, later on, if you want to delete a record, you don't want to delete John Elder because there might be 20 records of somebody named John Elder. But each record has a unique ID. So you could delete record number 87, for instance. And there are no other records that have the ID of 87. So that's what that's used for. So, okay, so we create this command here. We want to select everything and our IDs from addresses. We also need to then do something called fetch all. So C fetch all, and fetch all does just what it sounds like. It fetches all of the records. Now you can do fetch one, and it will just bring back one record, the first record. You can do fetch many, and then in here, say, designate how many records you want to fetch, 50, for instance. We don't want to do that. We just want to fetch all. Okay, so normally you could just print out just print out this thing, right? But this is Tkinter, and print doesn't really work with Tkinter. So we need to create a label and kind of print that onto the screen. But first, let's just run this by actually doing that. Well, actually, instead of using c.fetchAll, let's smush that into a variable so that we can then put that variable into a label, as we've done so many times. So let's call this records and set that equal to that. Now we can print out records, and it won't print it to the screen in our app, but it will print it to the terminal after we close the app. So let's run this real quick just to see what this record looks like that we've already put in. Head back over, run it again. And if we click show records, nothing happens. But then if we then close it, we see, boom, this record appears. And you'll notice these brackets. That means that this is returning a Python list. And inside of that list, there is a Python tuple. And then inside of the tuple, you can access each of these things by their index number. So John is the 0th item in the list. In the tuple, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6. So that's the way it's returned. we can, of course, do anything we want with this information, this data. We can sort it out and put it on the screen however we want. So what exactly do we want to do? Well, we'll leave the print there for now in case we need to troubleshoot. But since we just have one record, let's create a for loop, right? So let's go for, what do we want to call this? So we've called this one records. So let's call this for record in records, right? And then let's create a variable called print records. And we want that to plus equal out whatever is in records. And since it's a list with a tuple inside of it, the 0th item of the list is our tuple. So we can actually call the 0th item. We'll change this in a minute and you'll see why. But for the very first time we do this, since there's only one record, we can do it like this. Now, I want to sort of print out record, right, which is the item in the loop that we're going to loop through. And we also want to concatenate and then put a line break. And the reason why we want to do this is because we're going to create a label here. And we want each item that gets printed out to be on its own line. So we have to put a line break in here. Now, this is a problem because record, the thing we're printing out, you can see a couple of these things are integers. And you can't concatenate a string with an integer. So we actually need to convert this whole thing to a string, which is not too hard. We can just wrap this whole thing in the string function. Okay, so now outside of this loop, we want to create a label. So let's call this the query label. So we're making a query and set that equal to label, and then it's in root, and the text we want to be print underscore records, right? Now, we actually need to, before we start looping, we need to create that variable and set it equal to nothing since we're in a function here. And that's how that works. So let's go loop through results. So finally, we need to query underscore label dot grid this thing out. And I think we're in row 8 now. Come down here and look. Yeah, so row 7 is the last thing we did. So now we're in row 8. And we want column equals 0. And we need to column span this thing out to equal 2. And I think that will work. So if we save this and run it again, pull this over, click show records, boom. On each line, we get an item in that tuple. John, Elder, and we could do whatever we want with these things. Okay, so that works with one record, but we're going to have more than one record. So let's create another one real quick. Let's go Bob Smith. He lives at 20 East Cedar Street. I don't know. St. Louis, Missouri. I don't know what the zip code is there. 62901. I don't know. Who knows? Okay, so now we add this to the record. Boom, it disappears. If we click here, nothing happens. Why? Well, let's close this, and we can see, whoops, it looks like this has been added twice. What's going on there? Oh, that's from the first time we clicked the button. Disregard that. Okay, so look, when we call this loop, we're calling the 0th item in our list, which if we pull this back up, here's our list, and there are 2 items in it. Item 1 is this tuple, and then there's a comma, and then here's item 2. So we're calling item 1, or item 0, which is this item, the 0th item. So that's the only thing it prints to the screen. We don't really want to do that, so let's just take this off and just print out everything, right? So if we save this and run it, let's clear the screen, run it again, pull this over, show records, boom. Now we get each tuple printed on its own line, and it has, everything inside of there that's in our records. So then we see the last thing is the ID, the primary key, the OID. So there's 1, there's 2, very cool. So now this is tuples. We know from just regular Python how to do stuff with tuples. So we can format this any way we want. And it's still printing this out on the screen. So I think now we can get rid of this print thing right here. I'll just comment it out in case you want to reference this code later. But down here, let's see, in our for loop, we can tell this to print out anything we want. So each record is an item now, is a tuple, and inside of that, it has item numbers, tuple numbers, right? So the 0th item of each of these records is the first name. So if we just do that and save this and run it, now we will get first names printed, John and Bob, right? Very cool. So, we can do anything we want with this. We can concatenate some more. Let's put in a space and then concatenate again. And then let's just grab this whole thing and paste it and then concatenate the line break again. This guy needs a quotation mark. Okay, instead of record, the 0th item, let's call the first item, which is the last name. Excuse me, save this, run it again. Pull it over, show records, John Elder, Bob Smith. Very, very cool. If we add another person, Tina Miller, I don't know. She lives at 89 Apple Street in, I don't know, what's a good town? New York, 10092. I have no idea what the zip code is there. Now if we add this, boom, that disappears. If we click this button again, boom, Tina Miller pops right on up. So like I said, you could format this any way you want. I'm going to leave that to you. I'm just showing you the basic functionality of how to do these things. There's 1,000 ways you can create reports and things and output data however you want. That's the beauty of Python and Tkinter. So I'll leave that to you. I think in the next video, we need to build a thing in here to delete a record. If we want to remove Bob Smith, there's no way to do that yet. So we'll do that in the next video. In the meantime, if you're interested in this database stuff, specifically the SQLite database, head over to my website, codemy.com. I just released a course not long ago in SQLite. This is just pure SQLite and Python. And it's 22 videos, hour and a half long, and it costs $29. Of course, you can sign up for total membership using that YouTube coupon code I'm always going on about, and you'll pay just $27 for all of my courses, including this one, which is better than one course for $29. So if you're interested, definitely use that coupon code. Some people don't. I don't understand it. And you'll learn all of this stuff in great detail. We really go in more detail than I'm going to go into in this series. I'm just going to show you some basic stuff right now. Like I said, if you're interested, take a look at that course to learn, in-depth stuff about SQLite. All right, so that's all for this video. If you liked it, be sure to smash the like button below, subscribe to the channel, and check out codemy.com where you can use coupon code YouTube to get $22 off membership. You pay just $27 to access all my courses, hundreds of videos, and the PDFs of all my best-selling coding books. Join over 50,000 students learning to code. My name is John Elder from codemy.com, and we'll see you in the next video.